What's going on, everybody? From the MTG Thoughtcast, I'm Joseph. I'm your host for the daily Outlaws of Thunder Junction spoilers here on the MTG Thoughtcast. Before we get into all the crazy cards that we're going to talk about today, there's a bunch of buttons down at the bottom of the screen. Likes, comments, subscribes, those help us out a ton. That tells the robots that you want our videos in your feed more often. Also, I'm going to be talking about the highlights of the spoilers for today. If you want to join in the discussion for all of it and everything that we have to say about everything Magic related, go ahead and jump in our Discord. Links down in the bio, totally free. We love just hanging out with everybody. Let's go ahead and get into March 26th, day one of the Outlaws of Thunder Junction spoilers. Started off very, very strong. We have Insatiable Avarice. It's a 1-mana sorcery with Spree, which is a new mechanic for this set, which is choose one or more additional costs. So you can choose to do 2 generic mana and search your library for a card, shuffle it, and put that card on top. So it'd be 3 mana total, 2 and then the black for the cost. The other one that you could choose is black for target player draws 3 cards and loses 3 life. So there's 3 different modes for this, which is 2 and a black for search your library for a card, shuffle it, put it on top, like a Vampiric Tutor. The other mode is black for target player draws 3 cards and loses 3 life, or 2 black for search your library for a card, shuffle it, put it on top, and then target player draws 3 cards and loses 3 life. So, like I said, this is kind of a Vampiric Tutor. This is kind of a Night's Whisper, all put together in one card that only costs a single mana to begin with. So it's really easy to tutor. You could find it with a Micromancer, and just so much utility on one thing. So Spree seems like it's a very cool way to do a new version of Kicker, and I'm very excited to see what other Spree cards they have. We're going to be talking about at least one other one today. Next new card we're going to talk about is the Gitrog, Ravenous Ride. It's 3 black and a green for a legendary creature frog horror mount. It's a 6/5 with trample and haste, and whenever the Gitrog deals combat damage to a player, you get to sacrifice a creature that's saddled at this turn. We'll get there. If you do, draw X cards, then put up to X land cards from your hand onto the battlefield tapped, where X is the sacrificed creature's power, and saddle 1. So the way the saddle works is it's like vehicles, where there's a crew cost. With the vehicles, the crew cost turned the artifact into a creature. With creatures that are mounts, you're going to be able to saddle them, which is like the crew cost, except all it does is give you an additional benefit. So the Gitrog can attack as normal. It's a 6/5 with trample and haste, which is unbelievable on its own, especially for 5. And then if you've saddled something, you're going to get this ability to sack whatever saddled it, draw cards equal to its power, and then put up to X lands down where it's the power. So this, I play Slimefoot and Squee in Commander, and I'm very ridiculously excited about this in here because I want to be sacrificing Slimefoot and Squee, drawing cards, ramping. That's all the things we want to do here. My deck is eating good today, and speaking of that, next card we're talking about here is Vaultborn Tyrant, which is part of the Big Score set, which is the bonus sheet. So it's 5 green and a green for a 6/6 dinosaur with trample that says whenever Vaultborn Tyrant or another creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 3 life and draw a card. And then whenever it dies, if it's not a token, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. So I've made the mistake of misevaluating Gruff Triplets before. So we're going to be, again, this is ridiculous in like the Slimefoot and Squee deck with the Gitrog. So if you can just keep reanimating this and then sacking the original target, you're going to just keep making tokens. You're just going to keep making, if you sack the non-token one, it'll make a token. Then you can reanimate the original one, sack it, make a token, reanimate the original one, and then as you keep doing that, you just keep drawing more and more cards. So like I said, this gives me Gruff Triplet vibes, which is one of my favorite cards right now. So I'm ridiculously excited for Vaultborn Tyrant. Next up, we got a 2-mana Planeswalker, which is not my favorite thing to see, but I know a lot of you like those. So it's blue and blue for Jace Reawakened. It's a 3 loyalty Planeswalker that says you can't cast the spell during your first, second, or third turns of the game. So it is 2 mana, but you can't play it until turn 4. Sure, somebody's going to break that and find a way to undo that. So his +1 loyalty ability is draw a card, then discard a card. Easy. His other +1 ability is you may exile a non-land card with mana value 3 or less from your hand. If you do, it becomes plotted. So we'll have a card show up with the plot text in it, but the way that plot works, officially confirmed now, you pay the plot cost or a card just becomes plotted. And then on a subsequent turn, you get to cast that card without paying its mana cost at sorcery speed. So it's going to sit in exile, then on your next main phase or whatever, your next turn's main phase, you get to play it for free. So Jace plotting cards with mana value 3 or less from your hand, the following turn, you'll just be able to play those for free. Ridiculously powerful. This is very strong. And then his -6 is until end of turn, whenever you cast a spell, copy it. Sure, dude. Okay. Jace is just making copies of stuff. That's a crazy -6. So this is going to do some work. I'm excited to see where this lands. After Jace, thematically, we have Vraska the Silencer, which is 1 black and a green for a legendary creature, Gorgon Assassin, which I don't know if we're talking about any of the Outlaw cards, but there's a new group, sort of like the party mechanic of Outlaws, and Assassins is part of it. So it's a 3/3 with Death Touch, and says whenever a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, you may pay 1. If you do, return that card to the battlefield tapped under your control. It's a treasure artifact with tap, sack the artifact, do the treasure thing, and it loses all other card types. It's going to come back under your control, not as a creature, but as a treasure that retains the text box of whatever creature died. So this reminds me a ton of Brenner Ginger Sculptor, which so many people is a beloved commander, which he brings back things as 1/1 food golems that can sacrifice themselves. Vraska is going to be bringing things back as treasures, and it's also things your opponents control. So let's say you cut down something of your opponents, you pay an extra 1 and you get that creature back as a treasure. Seems crazy. This is going to do some very, very cool stuff in Commander. I actually am very excited about where I'm going to put this in Commander, because this is something that I love doing. Moving on from Vraska, we have Kellen the Kid. This one is shout out Jared Bobier, our co-host here at the podcast. This is going to do ridiculous things in his Ramos deck, which is a Ramos Cascade deck. So Kellen the Kid is green, white, and a blue for a legendary creature, human fairy rogue. This is the first time we've seen Kellen without an adventure on him, but he does work really well with adventures. So it's a 3/3 with flying and lifelink. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, you may cast a permanent spell with equal or lesser mana value from your hand without paying its mana cost. If you don't, you get to put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. So specifically, what I think is neat is the way this works with Cascade is if you have permanents that cascade, so things that enter and then cascade, you'll be able to kind of chain a bunch of those together. So let's say you've played a Bloodbraid Elf that costs 4. Play it, you exile until you hit something that costs 3. You cast that from exile. Now all of a sudden you get to play a 3-drop. So you could play something that costs 3 in Cascades that's a permanent. So you can just kind of chain these things together. Specifically for Jared, this is going to be 3 counters on Ramos and then just free value every time you cascade, which is all that deck wants to do. So shout out Jared, shout out Kellen the Kid. Next up, we have a cool new series of enchantments that is a riff on an older series of enchantments. So Tiny Bones Joins Up is black mana for a legendary enchantment that says whenever Tiny Bones joins up, enters the battlefield, any number of target players each discards a card. And then whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, any number of target players each mills a card and loses a life. So back to my Slimefoot and Squee deck that's eaten real good this season. This is going to be every time you reanimate Slimefoot and Squee, everybody mills a card and loses a life. And then just an immediate I'm going to play it. All of us discard a card. I've discarded my Vaultborn Tyrant. And then we can just get the chain going. So Tiny Bones Joins Up is very cool. The other legendary enchantment that got spoiled today is Vraska Joins Up, which is green and a black for another legendary enchantment that says whenever Vraska joins up, enters the battlefield, put a death touch counter on each creature you control. And then whenever a legendary creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This is just clean and simple. It's going to give your creatures evasion, it's going to make them more valuable with blocking, and it's going to draw you some cards. So I like this a lot. These are a riff on the Oath enchantments. So originally from the Oath of the Gatewatch set, which was just after Return to Zendikar, it was the Gatewatch joining up. So it's cool to see The spin on that being the villains that are joining up now. Okay, so here's our card with plot. Slick Shot Show Off is 1 and a red for a bird wizard that's 1/2 with flying and haste. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Slick Shot Show Off gets +2/+0 until end of turn, and then it has plot for 1 and a red. So you can pay 1 and a red, exile the card from your hand, cast it as a sorcery on a later turn without paying its mana cost, plot only as a sorcery. So I guess this is a strange one to me. I don't really understand the scenario where you would want to be plotting it, other than you want to have a really explosive following turn where you could, play it back in for free. It has haste, you cast a non-creature spell, it gets bigger. But it's neat that its cost and its plot cost are the same, and it has haste. That's going to be a very good one. I'll expect to see this show up in standard quite a bit. After Slick Shot Show Off, we're talking about Final Showdown, which is a very exciting one with Spree. So its total cost, its converted mana cost is 1, and then it has Spree. So you're going to be choosing 1 or more additional costs. So for white and 1 generic as its first ability, all creatures lose all abilities until end of turn. For white and 1 generic and its second ability, you choose a creature you control. It gains indestructible until end of turn. And then for white, 3 and 2 white, so a total of 6, you get to destroy all creatures at instant speed. You can do any combination of those together. So it could be white, it could be 5 generic and 3 white to give all creatures lose all abilities. A creature you control gains indestructible and destroy all creatures at instant speed. It's a lot of mana for me, but I fully expect this card to see a lot of play, just because Dress Down sees play, which is a 2-mana enchantment with flash that says creatures lose all abilities. It's nice that it draws a card, and this doesn't, but Final Showdown being a white version of Dress Down alone is very good. Or even just 2 in a white for all creatures lose all abilities, a creature you control gains indestructible. The way that those stack is it's going to remove all abilities and then give indestructible to something. So yours isn't going to get indestructible and then lose it. So don't worry about that. And then I think the destroy all creatures is going to be the sort of fail safe, or maybe the late game mode for this. But being able to dress down in response to somebody casting their Thassa's Oracle is a very common play in things like cEDH or very high powered EDH. So I fully expect that we'll see Final Showdown show up in a lot of those decks. So moving on from here, we have a very, very powerful reprint on the Wanted posters, which is the special guests. So we have Mana Drain. It's back. It's in a standard booster. We love to see that. Mana Drain, if you don't know, it's a strictly better counter spell. Counters a spell, and then at the beginning of your next main phase, you get a generic mana, you get colorless mana equal to the spell that you countered. Anytime that they want to give me more mana drains, I'm very, very happy with that. Another super powerful reprint is Stoneforge Mystic, also in the special guest slot. So Stoneforge Mystic, if you don't know, enters the battlefield, finds new equipment, it finds your Batterskull, it puts a Batterskull into play for cheap. So this is a card that I believe is creeping up on $30 right now. So I'm happy to see a reprint of that. And then the last reprint to talk about today is Torpor Orb, which is in the big score set. So this will be standard legal. So it's just 2 mana for an artifact that says creatures don't cause abilities to trigger as they enter the battlefield. These are all crazy, crazy good ones. Torpor Orb sees a lot of play, again in cEDH, in Legacy, things like that. Guys, that brings us to the end of today's daily spoilers. If I missed anything, let me know down below. Are you guys excited about these ones? Do you feel like we're kind of heading in a weird direction with things like Spree and all the different modal spells? It's getting very complicated, so I'm very curious to see as we go on through the spoiler season where the complexity of this set lands. But right now, my expectations are high for this one. I'm feeling really good about it. Once again, I'm Joseph. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for another daily spoiler video.